And this is our second presentation coming from slightly closer to Australia. Yifan Wang is a tech journalist, artist and independent researcher working with codes, video games, digital sounds and images. And I love this description. Embracing DIY spirits and wild imaginations, her work seeks to interrogate and demystify contemporary forms of power such as digital governmentality and financialized neo-feudalism. Her practice also looks for tangible, concrete, everyday acts of resistance and subversion, which I'm hoping we hear about next. And Changwen Chen is a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of Communications and New Media at the National University of Singapore. He's a critical cultural scholar interested in the social history of learning and work culture and its intersections with technology, development and post-socialist politics. I'm really grateful for your patience hanging on online all this time, both of you. So it looks like you're ready to go. The floor is now yours.
All right, thanks, Melissa, for the introduction. Can people hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So we have a lot of materials to cover, but I think there's a lot of conversations I'm already hearing in my head following the presentation so far today. So I'll dive right in. Our research, which is still at a very preliminary stage, is tentatively entitled "You Can Encrypt It, We Can Crack It: Cell Phone Repair Practices in Huaqiangbei, Shenzhen, China." And this is, I think, a good segue from Jack's presentation, Jack and Michelle's presentation, since Changwen, as I just checked, actually started their business in Huaqiangbei, doing, I think, mobile phone supply chain as an OEM there when they first started operations. So I'm just gonna skip over this part, just some quick author bios, but back to the start of the presentation, Huaqiangbei. It is an urban area in the southern Chinese city of Shenzhen, right, known for its role at the forefront of China's post-socialist economic privatization and neoliberalization, which has turned Shenzhen into a central hub of electronics manufacturing in China. And Huaqiangbei, thanks to its close proximity to all these supply chain infrastructures in Shenzhen, has developed into one of the largest markets in electronics and secondhand handphones across Asia. So just now we saw the platform tree, with Telcare being at the root, and Huaqiangbei together with the China world factory supply chain infrastructures, we would argue are also kind of at this root part of the whole ecosystem. So we just want to start with this short video without any introduction. I think hopefully the video itself would be striking enough. So let's, can you hear it all right? Okay, cool.
屏跟屏幕换不了，铁是咋回事呢？苹果出生的屏幕跟面容加密绑定的，一旦你换完屏幕以后，面容也就不好使了。这也就意味着你手里的苹果13，如果屏幕坏了，只能去官方售后换，不能在第三方维修。这不坑爹吗？不是？不好意思，苹果，华强北又一次让你失望了。你能加密，我们就能破解。来，今天给苹果安排一下，有请。哎，铁子们，这就是今天的主人公了，13 Pro。你看，已经摔成这个样子了，而且屏幕有时候还花一下。不用想了，屏一定要换了。现在苹果是不断在加密，无论你换的是什么屏，只要不是在官方售后换的，它都提示你这屏幕是非原装屏。到13系列就更恶心了，它不光显示非原装屏，它还会内容不好使。现在我给这个13 Pro 装的就是一个原拆屏。来，铁子们，咱们看一下，无法验证此 iPhone 屏幕是正品屏幕。你妈，你自己家东西你不认识，你问我，这也就算了。最恶心的是，现在换完屏幕，面容还不好使。面容 ID 不可用，正所谓你有照相机，我有录像机，你加密我破解，真好玩。所有的加密信息都存储在这个小 IC 上面。现在我们把原机的 IC 搬到新屏幕上面 ，IC 下面钉个刀片，以预防温度太高把屏幕烤坏。该折腾还折腾一下，这屏幕太贵了，这要是干着干着嘎巴一下子，这个月又白干了。咱们先把新屏幕上的这个屏幕 IC 给它拆掉。 其实苹果是加密，它已经不是第一回了。从前些年的电池，后来到屏幕，再到后来的相头，再到现在的面容，我很好奇它下次还能加密啥。这个完事了，然后把底下处理处理，然后再把原机屏幕上面加密 IC 给它装到这个新屏幕上面就可以了。这要搞完了，然后装机测试测试，看看这个 IC 有没有装好，新机系统看看还有没有屏幕单装。你看这个干干净净了，然后测试一下面容。哎，人脸识别成功，录入成功，然后咱设个密码，看屏幕解锁行不行？你看这描解速度还挺快，搞定。怎么样，铁子？这波操作是不是很华强北？我是阿 B， 下见，拜。
All right, let me try to find my. Okay. All right, so, oops, 1 second. Right, so this video is made by Abing, right? He is a mobile phone repair technician in Huaqiangbei, and this video is posted on the TikTok-like Chinese social media platform called Kuaishou, a platform known for its large amount of grassroots, lower-income users, typically based in rural areas of China. And it's worth noting here that this video deals with a workaround for iPhone's Face ID encryption, which I'm sure will ring a bell for many of the repair activists, practitioners, experts in this meeting, since it has been a notorious issue among repair communities around the world, although later sort of resolved with a quiet iOS update. But still, it puts this video, as well as the broader Huaqiangbei repair community, in direct conversation with international repair movements, right? We all face the same problems. And I just want to draw our, I just want to mention, like, in the earlier presentations, we hear a lot about how the components and parts within a device, if you change it, then it can't talk to the other parts of the device or the main board of the car or the machine, the tractor, and that creates an issue. And here we see sort of a mesmerizing series of operations that sort of trick the machine into thinking the replacement part is still the original part, hence sort of offering a solution or another approach, right? Other than an alternative to regulatory approach on how to address this common software block issue in repair activism. But right now, I just want to draw our attention to this final question that Abing turns to us and asks, how about that is in this very Huaqiangbei? So in a way, this is also our research question, right? What does that mean when we use Huaqiangbei as an adjective, when we say Huaqiangbei mobile phone repair practices? What are the characteristics, who and what are the actors within these repair networks? And then we will compare and contextualize these Huaqiangbei practices within the global situation, and then we'll maybe draw some more explicit conclusions about what we can learn from studying the Huaqiangbei repair community. I'll present our preliminary findings in two parts, mapping Huaqiangbei and comparing Huaqiangbei. Just a brief note on methodology. Our work so far has only involved online ethnography participatory observation on the Kuaishou platform. We acknowledge its limitations, and we do have plans for offline fieldwork in Huaqiangbei, hopefully later this year, very soon. But we do want to note that we believe the online approach has its use in allowing for a foregrounding of these Huaqiangbei repair actors' firsthand self-expression and public participation in their own voice, right? This will also, we also want to note that we approach these content not as, not in a taken for granted manner. We treat them not as self-transparent statements, but as staged performances and produced content, right? We ask not only what do the content tell and show, but perhaps more importantly, how are they produced, by what people, in what context, for what purposes, and how are they intended to be watched, and how can we watch it so that we can get behind sort of this procedure or process of production. So Yeah, now I think this is the most interesting part, taking a closer look at the Huaqiangbei community. And as we have perhaps already gotten a glimpse from the Abin video we just saw, what's one of the most striking thing about the community is this amazing, mind-blowing range of tricks and fixes, tools and techniques that unfold in front of us, right? Like a vibrant network of people and things, pregnant with technological imaginations and political possibilities, creatively and defiantly refusing and hacking big tech monopolies just by as simple as swapping an encryption chip. Now that does rely, the feasibility and affordability of that does rely upon kind of the easy access to a bunch of tools and parts, which Huaqiangbei's location in Shenzhen gives us access to. We'll talk more about that very soon. But on this part of technological imaginations, I'll jump over that, but I do want to dwell upon this mesmerizing collage of images for a bit longer. So to give you a taste of the diverse range of repair actors at play in Huaqiangbei, right, we can take a look at this yellow things at the bottom left corner. They're called, in professional lingo of Huaqiangbei, card stickers. What cards, what stickers? They're meant for those SIM card locked devices, secondhand iPhones in particular, imported from the States, and then sold at secondhand iPhones for a cheaper price in Huaqiangbei. But these are SIM card locked. What that means is it's supposed to only work with certain US telecom carriers, such as AT&T or T-Mobile, what have you. So how do we use them in China? Well, you put one of these stickers onto your Chinese SIM card and then put them together into the SIM card slot of the iPhone, put that into the iPhone. It tricks the machine into thinking your Chinese SIM card is in fact an AT&T SIM card, and it's supposed to pick up signal from the Chinese carrier in China normally. And as if that's not sort of surprising or breathtaking enough, these two images show a process known as opening up hosts or opening hosts for iPhones. And what that is you can literally install a new SIM card slot, physical SIM card slot for iPhones, secondhand iPhones that come with no physical SIM card slot because they are eSIM card devices. So there's this whole supply chain of like cables and modules specifically made only for this purpose, for the purpose of opening up holes. And you can, with these components, modularized components, you can do the swap relatively easily with no microscoping or micro soldering necessary. And in the middle here, it goes back to the Face ID encryption, but there are other devices not for Face ID, but for general encryption, firmware detection, and burning. Basically, what they do is made by a bunch of companies, but the most notable one is probably this Luban. There's things called iFace. What it does is, together with the desktop software, this detector thing will detect and copy the encryption firmware on any chip within a mobile phone. And then with that software, you can burn that firmware onto your replacement part. And then when you put it onto the phone, the main board of the phone thinks, oh, this replacement part has the same code, it checks out. So, you know, the packets flow and they start talking to each other. But from the hardware perspective, you have a new, you have a repaired part, right? And then finally, how am I doing on time? Just want to quickly note this specialty glue. It's kind of small, but it says laser dot projector specialty glue. And what it is a glue specifically meant for the sole purpose of gluing laser dot projectors, which is part of the Face ID module, back onto its flex cables after you've changed the parts. So I think just the specificity gives us a sense of like the high degree of sophistication and complexity and sort of exuberant livelihood and diversity of all the repair actors and ingenious repair hacks at play in Huaqiangbei, right? So the next section we wanted to touch upon, or we mentioned earlier, is political possibilities. We want to suggest that we see Huaqiangbei having a kind of potential, if only an ambiguous and murky one, for radical politics. And what we mean by that is, for example, recall in a video by Abin, he expressed very explicit criticism of multinational corporations and big tech monopolies like Apple, right? Calling Apple's Face ID encryption practice outright gross. In another video, he says, the point of repair is that if you can fix it, you don't want to change it. And that directly resonates with a lot of the repair over by new practices amongst many more radical or politically conscious repair communities around the world. Another thing we want to sort of note is this genre of videos that teach viewers how to bargain hunt in Huaqiangbei, like explaining the actual market price of certain repair parts, which repair shop is the best or the most reliable. And at this image on the right here, student budget of 2,000 Chinese yuan, that is about $300 US, which secondhand parenthesis, Apple phone can I get? So we're tentatively calling these strategies and practices collectively as anti-consumerist consumption, where a form of subversion against typical consumerism is carried out in the form of consumption. So consider this act, right, of buying a secondhand refurbished iPhone for $300 US. It clearly implies consumerist desires for an iPhone for the Apple brand, for the identity of being an iPhone owner. Yet at the same time, it's quite straightforwardly anti-consumerist in that it doesn't consume all that much, right? It limits the amount of spending, takes place in the circular economy, and doesn't at all contribute to the expansion of new consumer products. So we see a kind of political ambiguity here, and that leads us to another phase or dimension of the Huaqiangbei community that we want to discuss. And we call, I'm just gonna skip over that. Yeah, so, you know, we see all this dazzling, thought-provoking repair technologies and potential seeds for political possibilities, yet at the same time, they are deeply embedded within the present dominant political economic structures characterized by platform capitalism, attention economies, market logic, and consumerism. These structures analyze and hijack the richness of the community into a set of conduits meant for maintaining the current social political order. For example, a lot of the short video contents and influencers explicitly focus on the theme of how to make money in Huaqiangbei. Screenshots here show extremely common clickbaiting and successfully so video titles on the Kuaishou platform in Huaqiangbei. How much can a Huaqiangbei business actually make? Can I start a business, become an entrepreneur in Huaqiangbei after graduating middle school? And here, many influencers also use this content primarily for the purpose of selling merchandise, repair services, repair parts, accessories, secondhand phones to their followers. So the logic of content operate in a relatively strictly and narrowly kind of logic of e-commerce, right, of traffic economy, attention economy. Here are, most of them list these merchandise directly on their profile pages of the short video platform. So here are just some screenshots. Many also are interested in the career outlook, monthly income, tuition fees of studying to become a repair technician in Huaqiangbei. So tentatively, we're kind of playing with this diagram schematic of understanding or analyzing the empirical materials we have so far. We sort of see this dual structure of both a hacker economy and an attention economy, a hacker economy of knowledge and attention economy of content. So the most apparent, the one we're all too familiar with, is the attention economy, right? Formulaic content, often following proven popular storylines, circulates to catch viewers' eyes, attract clicks, increase followers, all of which are then turned into e-commerce sales. Yet at the same time, latent within or emerging side by side or sort of interlacing, entangled together with this content is like some kind of knowledge, like the knowledge you and I are getting when we watch this video. Next time we can attempt to repair our phones ourselves, right? So this knowledge is then exchanged, shared, and gifted amongst repair technicians in Huaqiangbei, as well as broader amateur fixers. And in fact, this is how Changwen and I came to this content in the first place. We both kind of tried to fix our own electronics, and you Google tutorials in Chinese, and then this would start kind of coming into your feed. So we call this parallel more fluid, and we try to capture its sort of overflowing nature with the, I don't know, the curves. We want to call this a hacker economy, encouraging technological demystification and challenging high-tech giants. So we argue these two economies are mutually parasitic of and codependent upon each other, with the former often taking the dominant form and suppressing or hijacking the latter, with content kind of conforming and depoliticizing knowledge. But the hacker economy also always already permeates, haunts, and threatens to emerge from the attention economy, spreading the seeds of alternative politics. So I don't think I have a lot of time to develop this, but I would be happy to talk more. We would be happy to talk more at the discussion section. So we'll go to the next point very quickly, just some brief comparisons about Huaqiangbei repairers and US practitioners, which I'm sure you're more familiar with than I am. For example, the Face ID encryption, right? iFixit, right, repair campaigns. We heard about it in the morning. That's how this issue eventually got solved more structurally and systematically. But before that, this all happened, I think, in late 2021 or late 2020. But Huaqiangbei had the hack, which we saw earlier before that. And the encryption firmware hack, in addition to the chip swapping technique. But just overall, we observed sort of two key points of contrast between sort of Huaqiangbei and typical global north repair activism. The first is that Huaqiangbei adopts this direct action approach. And this is not to say that US practitioners do not do that. In fact, American farmers have been hacking their tractors for a long time. And I argue that this tractor hacking practice illustrates a key advantage of direct action repair over policymaking legislative actions, because it allows for immediate fixes and results, right? In the case of farmers, they can harvest their crops in time. It also allows one to carry out repair struggles in places where media, legislative, or policy initiatives are not possible, effective, or safe. So we argue, and importantly, as I sort of hinted at in the beginning, Huaqiangbei's direct action repair approach is made possible precisely because of its location within Shenzhen, close to supply chains, with many technicians actually being, repair technicians actually being ex-factory workers. So this gives Huaqiangbei easy access to spare parts, recycled handsets, and affordable repair equipment. But we want to note that such possibilities come at a cost, right? The region bears one of the world's worst records in worker exploitation and e-waste pollution. But overall, this complicated labor and class politics, we argue, urges us to recognize the importance of class consciousness in repair movements, of collective organizing with supply chain workers and informal laborers toward international repair solidarity. And the second part, the second point of contrast is, we believe the two sets of practices in Huaqiangbei and the States evoke two kinds of political imaginations. Huaqiangbei repair, while US technicians are typically well-versed in right-to-repair discourses and policy goals, Huaqiangbei repair practices seem more deeply embedded and constrained within capitalism and consumerism. However, as we have hopefully shown so far, that politics is in fact far richer, more complex, especially when it comes to the undeniably subversive, radical, and imaginative set of hands-on knowledge, self-made tools that very effectively resist corporate repair blocks, right? They teach us about new possibilities of resistance, mobilizations, and actions beyond institutional regulatory frameworks. they contribute to global repair struggles by provoking and widening our political imaginations. So how do we really activate or learn from these wider sets of imaginations? And that brings me to our future plans. I'll skip over this offline field work, but I want to spend a bit more time on the second part, which relates more directly to the question I just said, is that if, as we have tried to argue, the Huaqiangbei network is ripe with techno-political possibilities, yet confined and restrained, then how do we redirect or activate these energies into something else, into radical knowledge against proletarianization, into a hack against vectorialism? Here I'm referring to Bernard Stiegler and Mackenzie Wert's concepts. So this art research project is an attempt to do that. It's very tentative and preliminary, and we're very open to suggestions. But the idea is sort of to hack or to fix up content into knowledge. Recall the attention economy of content and the hacker economy of knowledge we proposed earlier. So the current plan is that it would take the format of an artist hacker workshop, where if we could, if opportunities permit, invite and collaborate with a Huaqiangbei repair technician to collectively host hands-on electronics workshops, perhaps in the form of how to replace an iPhone screen or how to make a functional cheap phone with cheap secondhand parts. We hope this could be a collective experiment to reimagine Huaqiangbei repair practices, reimagine the hacker economy beyond the constraints of the attention economy, right? In grasping the repair practices as creative agency. We also hope kind of a more creative format could allow us to destabilize the typical research power dynamics, to find ways not only to study about, but to learn from Huaqiangbei, to move from repair content to repair knowledge, from research subjects to research teachers. Here, so this is actually kind of an earlier iteration, and that closely relates to Transsion and healthcare and Bird, all that. We can talk about it in the discussion. Shenjai thing, they're extremely creative and I think quite easily made. So the workshop could very easily be to make something like this. Just some images of what that might look like. This is a workshop I did at an art space in Singapore, building a DIY solar powered analog synthesizer. And here are some like other examples from artists around the world that we're sort of referencing. But yeah, we'd love to talk about potential spaces or platforms. Very open to overall advice and suggestions for both the art project and the research. I will end with this, I think, very memorable and mind-blowing picture of a man blowing into an iPhone as if it were a harmonica. I don't think I have time to explain what it is, but if people are interested, we can talk more in the Q&A section. But yeah, let this image sort of do the work for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of imagination. Questions to the floor if there are people in the room who would like to ask questions. Now's the time to raise your hand or leave a message in the chat. Anyone like to kick off? Yes, it looks like Adrian.
I just had maybe it's a slightly boring functional question for Jack and Michelle, which was, do we know what the profit sharing arrangements are for the different categories of childcare franchises in terms of, you know, is the parent company making money from the parts alone, or is there a share of the labour surplus, and how is the pricing mechanism managed? Is that managed through the network, or is that all done sort of under local market conditions?
Thanks for your question. So at this moment, this is still work in process. So I don't have much detail regarding what kind of contracts they are signing. But based on my observation at this stage, I think it's very diverse. So for for the official service center, it's very obvious. Car care will take almost majority of the profit, although sometimes it also cooperates with local repairmen. For example, the first repair shop was set up with the assistance of a local repair person, and he after a while he left car care because of the tension, the conflicts over profit sharing, and he think that he was not treated very fairly, so he left car care and set up his own repair shop. And regarding the second category, ASC, authorized service center. Car care will provide them repair materials and technical training for their technicians, and sometimes car care will also do tax for them, and will take care of this admin paperwork, legal paperwork, etc. And they have some agreements regarding how much money they can make from repairing certain changing models, and like the profit margin may vary from itel, Techno, or Infinix, because most of itel phones are feature phones, very cheap, so they can make very little money from it. So because of the diversity of the repair shops, and it's hard to generalize the profit sharing models, but this is something we can look further in the next stage. And Jack, do you have some observation from Asia?
Yes. First, I also want to say that we don't know the full answer. Okay, and the answer could also be not only complicated but also evolving. But the general sense I got by when I was interviewing the global manager for car care, we did a telephone interview, and I could get it. So the overall profit margin is quite low, right, and not high enough when he reports to the board, right? He oversees all the for all and therefore he was thinking it's not just from repair. He wanted to make that, like, he was the guy who designed the repair desk, okay, and then he had his way of, he actually wanted to make it a separate brand. Car care is not a service brand, but also a repair equipment brand. He was actually talking about, like, starting to think about that. And another thing would go also overlapping with the Huaqiangbei is that when I was observing repair person, okay, in Southeast Asia, okay, or in South Africa, even though they are not transient, the equipment they bought is standardized. It's from Shenzhen, all right. So it's so there's an ecology there for the repair equipment. So I think that's another growth area where they think they may find more profitability to retain their talents. But another again, my impression from talking to the repair person is that both in Vietnam and in Thailand, maybe this could be a cultural like a representation. Thai people and Vietnam people are usually very nice. So when I ask them, are they happy with their pay? Both of them, again, like these are skilled, okay, middle-aged, okay. Both of them say, oh, I'm very happy with my pay. I said, do you want more share, from the? They say no. I said, why you keep working here? They said, like, I like the social life. Okay, so in a way, I think there must be a certain degree of social interaction desirability, but maybe they are they are treated relatively well, okay, compared to maybe earlier. So I don't know, we don't know the objective number, but compared to the earlier experience working for other brands, okay, the car care is offering them livelihood with a social dimension. So it's not just the money that matters. Okay? But we still need to dig into. I hope one day we can see their books, okay, to see the full answer to your question.
Could I just add to that? And I know that we are running a little late, but it does seem to me that the social life that Jack just mentioned for skilled middle-aged repairers and the sorts of repair evangelists and activists we were seeing in the other paper, there are generational differences in how they socialize, right? Because the TikTok equivalent is now being used as a way to create this social capital, isn't it? In the way that your analysis of the content creation economy and the hacker economy intersect. I thought that was so fascinating as a way of looking at the currency that they're trading with and the way that they're also encouraging a different kind of economy of consumption. So I'm not sure if it would be obvious, Yifan, I'm not sure where you're based all of the time, but in the US setting, there has been a company that's, I believe, French in origin, Back Market, who have been doing some guerrilla marketing tactics for their resale platform in Apple stores. So have you heard of this, where they have been dropping leaflets in Apple stores telling people that they were participating in this awful capitalist economy and they should buy secondhand and go to backmarket.com? So it might be fun to compare some of those different strategies across cultures, because I think that's also what Jack and Michelle's paper is trying to do, is to say it's not either the West or China, it's not the North versus the South. I think that there are different generational activist tactics being used here, because we're, as you said at the beginning, we're all fighting the same problems. I wanted to make one more observation which related to the more North American approach to repair at the start of the day. You mentioned that some of the technicians who are doing this activism are likely to be former factory workers or have very, very close association with factory workers given the location of Shenzhen. I wanted to see what you thought about this as a contribution to the discussion on repair we heard earlier, because so much of the obsession of the right to repair folks in the US context seems to be the fact that consumers are so removed from production. They don't know how these things are made, whereas the people that you're talking about who are showing how to repair do know. In fact, in many cases may have made them at a different time in their working life. So I just wondered if you had thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I don't, Changwen, do you want to jump in? I guess I'll offer a few quick observations on, this labor dimension. And I think that the intuition or the impulse for sort of critical scholars like us is to think of the sort of factory floor laboring process and familiarity and knowledge about it as kind of an inherently radicalizing potential, because it's sort of for us, we observe it when we observe it, it is a crossing of the industrial and capitalist division of labor, right? So when we gain knowledge of that labor production process, we feel empowered in a way. We feel we get a sense of technological demystification, and we get a sense of empowerment in that, I feel okay to open up the phone and repair it. But, and this is thanks to Changwen and our discussions, because his work deals a lot with the division of labor and what it means for workers to study philosophy. But As we look into the Huaqiangbei community, one thing we sort of observe is that this knowledge production and laboring process, manufacturing process, repair knowledge comes, it isn't like a striking thing for them. You know, it's their kind of bread and butter. It's like, you can see in the image earlier and in a lot of the healthcare sort of working situations, that's like the desktop computer, the Word, the Excel for us. So you know what I mean? Like I do think there's potential. It's like this ambiguity we were trying to refer to. We do think there's potential for radical politics, for a kind of technological demystification and more hands-on empowerment, but it takes more than simply having worked within a factory for that to take place. I think it's latent in there, it's later interlacing, it's entangled in there, but kind of more sort of activation or like a kind of hack needs to happen first. But from the perspective of the North, I believe there does, I'm not 100% sure, but some preliminary observations seem to suggest that there's a overly simplistic dichotomy between manufacturers and consumers, and workers, labor, supply chains typically don't quite enter the conversation. I suppose it's also due to the structural limitations of you know, legislative work, because it needs to be very nation state specific and so on. So yeah, what do people think? And Changwen, if you have anything to add, please do.
So far so good to me. I just have one small point to build on, to introduce some background of our thoughts. The reason why we focus on the division and the labor and thinking about repair activism from the perspective of mental labor is I personally learned a lot from the Maoist perspective during that period of time. The intellectual and the worker are encouraged to buy with each other. Intellectual need to do the mental manual labor, and the worker need to learn philosophy. So I think this kind of combination, this historical attempt to break the division of labor is really intellectual resource for us to thinking about the current repair activism. So very small point to introduce the background of our thought.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we might need to call this to a close. I'm so sorry to only have a few questions, but your content was so rich, and I do think that we will be able to stay in touch on offering some platforms for the events that you talked about that are very exciting. And I know Michelle and Jack will be speaking again very soon. Jack is kindly going to host one of the events in the series later in the year, so there's plenty more to come. So please thank our speakers in this wonderful session, which has really brought this home.